Welcome to another edition of SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Now here's your host, Dwayne and Allie.
Hello, Dwayne Brummett here with Ali Albarigo, SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Good morning, sir, and sorry for all the technical flipping difficulties here.
It's okay. It used to be me. I almost feel good that it's not me anymore, but we had licked the whole problem. We figured it out. We got it all working. Now, all of a sudden, I wonder what changes, software updates without us knowing and that kind of thing. Let me make sure we have audio on the podcast.
Okay.
It doesn't seem that that's working.
Well, I have bars that are showing that you know,
yeah,
it's picking up audio.
I'm playing the Facebook, but it's not playing on there. So let's ask if anybody's on here, if they could hear us on here.
Okay.
But I don't see anyone yet making any comments. I'm going to say, can anyone hear us?
Well, hopefully they can. Either way, it's being recorded. So
okay. It would look silly if we do the whole podcast with silent and then they have to listen to it at a later date. But okay, so we're here anyway. So let's see if anyone pops in and can hear us. I'm going to refresh my Facebook feed and see if that changes anything too.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be giving me audio. Weirdest thing. Very weird.
Well, is it going to give you audio while your video's going? And you can't get on your phone and look because you're.
No, I'm actually normally when I watch on Facebook, I could hear the audio.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to mute it when I'm watching it so that it doesn't play out. Yeah. So
let me look on my iPad here and see what I can see if we got anything. Yeah.
Play out.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. Weird. So weird. Maybe it's on my end on the playback. I might have to reboot next time.
Yeah, maybe this whole problem is on your end.
It could be. Then it's back to me again. So anyway, we have a good call today, right? We were talking about, instructors, right? And building the instructor base and bench strength and all that other stuff. So like, what are your thoughts? Like, this is going to be a good call. I think it's pretty relevant these days too.
Yeah. And I don't know that I thought about this when I first started. And what I mean by that was, I'm going to teach all the classes and, I'm in charge or whatever, you know what I mean? All that stuff. And, when you first start out, you don't have any bench strength for the most part. So, we're opening up a second location. We have a few students already that have signed up, and it's a one-man show. So my, Master Kent is there and he's teaching everybody all on his own. Right. He's got no help, which is a great experience for him because I think it's a very, not that he's not humble, but I think it's a very different outlook or a different perspective than what he's used to, because he's grown up in, a culture that you've had storm team members, you've had instructors, yada, 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 or leadership members, or however you guys are calling your bench strength.
Yeah. And
he's never had to, utilize or be as creative on his own. Right. And so I think that's a good thing, but I think it's also good in order for us as studio owners to grow, we need to build that bench strength, because sicknesses, vacations, somebody gets hurt, like you need to have a depth of bench strength. Now, how that looks all depends on what you want out of those things. And so, I think I did it okay a long time ago. If I had to restructure things from when I first started, I would do things differently. So when I say I did it okay, most of my school, especially in the beginning, 98% of all my students were kids. Right. And so all my bench strength were kids. Mm-hmm. And I always utilize, like if I had white belts, I would utilize the next level, the yellow belts, to help with the white belts if I was overwhelmed or there was too much going on or if they had too many students or whatever. So I was already at that time creating little leaders before they would become bigger leaders.
Right.
Since then, we've incorporated our leadership team, which is just an upgraded program, onto our storm team, which is the instructor training program.
Right.
Special team of role models, and that's the instructor training program. And again, my problem for me is I'm about 93% kids and only 7% adults.
Right.
So every single one of my storm team members, besides like 2, are kids. And when I say kids, you're talking, I don't know, 10 to 13 to 14.
Right.
That type of thing, moving in. But all that being said, I think that the future of your school is the mentoring of your bench strength for a couple of different reasons. Not just because, you might eventually hire them, although that's true, or you might eventually open up another second, third, whatever, fourth location. Yes, I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But the deeper they're in, the more of a buy-in and the more of a experience that they can have with you and the school. And then obviously, your ability to be able to mold and shape them becomes even deeper, because you're going to have more of a personal relationship with them. So I have circles, and I have, I got the very center circle. There are only 3 people in that circle.
Right.
And so Mr. Bean, Mr. Kent, and our program director. Those 3 people are in that center circle. Those are the most important people at the studio. And then, so I got my inner 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I pull out the next level are all the other instructors.
Yeah.
Like paid instructors.
Yeah.
The next circle are all the storm team members.
Right.
The next circle are all the leadership members, and then the final, well, not final, but the next circle is all of the general students that are obviously aren't in leadership yet.
Right.
And then outside of that next circle are all the leads and prospects and those type of things. Now, with regards to those individuals and those circles, of course, parents are involved inside of those circles. So when I say just a storm team member, well, that family is included in that.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think categorizing your levels, if you will, and what I like. So for instance, what I'm going to talk to Master Bean about is going to be at a different level. I don't mean a higher level. I just mean at maybe even a deeper level, of insider information than what I'm going to talk to a prospect about, somebody that's on the outside circle.
Right.
Does that kind of make sense?
Of course. Yeah.
So I think that the ability to be able to create leaders, like our that's what our tagline is, creating leaders from day one.
Right.
Your ability to be able to create leaders from prospect to white belt, to your upgrade program, to your next upgrade program, to actually becoming an instructor, and a studio owner at some point. Those levels, 1, are important, but 2 need to be defined, and then the information that's going to be taught within those as well in order to move the individual forward.
Yeah, and one thing back in the beginning of when you started talking about why we build bench strength, I think one thing too that we have to remember is not only do we build it so that we can expand or we can teach less, but just for our own sanity as well, right? Like, so, there, as an instructor, maybe in the early days, you could start off teaching I used to teach every class 6 days a week, day and night, 5 hours a night. And I would do every exercise with every single class. And as you get older, you start doing a little bit less of that. But I've had teachers that I've hired that weren't from that were actually from outside my student base, that I hired an instructor. And man, he couldn't even last 2 classes, a total of like a half hour and a 45-minute class combined, an hour and 15 minutes without having to go have something to eat and take a break. I'm like, and this is a grown man that just couldn't handle it. Like, I'm like, you need to just toughen up a bit. But I think the sanity part is a very big thing because, you could run a school, but you need some time on your own to take a break as well and recover from teaching, or else, what do they say? All work and no play, makes you Jack a dull boy, or whatever that saying was, right? So we have to make sure that we're building that. One question though for you, Dwayne, like what are your thoughts on phases of instructors? Like, we call that, SWAT team or assistant instructor, assistant to the assistant in our school. In fact, we have 3 levels of leadership team: low, medium, and high. In Japanese, it's called Geinin, Chunin, and Jonin. It's from the ninja training levels. So we have 3 phases. One of them are just helpers. They help in the class. They learn to hold pads. They learn to, do whatever. Then the other level is assisting, doing warm-ups and helping teach a little and assisting the instructor as he teaches. And the third is when they could really do their own class all by themselves. I would have no problem leaving them in charge if I was going on vacation and I needed help.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the levels I was talking about, where
Right.
Eventually you needed to define those. I don't know in the beginning that I did that.
Right.
I didn't define them. I just was, it was based on what the person was capable of doing, or
Yeah.
what I thought that they were capable of doing, or what at least they showed that they were capable of doing,
Uh-huh.
and then I would
Right.
allow them to have that freedom inside of that capability.
I think a big hangup for many schools is that, and by the way, it could be pressure from the parents as well, because we build up this persona that a black belt is the most amazing person in the world. They're the toughest, they're the greatest, they're the smartest, they're the teacher, they're the sensei. And then when we have an assistant teaching a class, parents or even the students at times feel that they're getting inferior training. But when I first came up, I had no help at all, like you said before. And I would go away for a week, whether I was traveling with my teacher or whatever I was doing. I would leave my highest rank, and at the time it was a yellow belt in charge. And I would make sure that those students know that they should never ever question that, because number one, if I put them in charge, they're capable. And 2, everybody could learn, because if that was my highest rank at the time, everyone can learn from that high rank and learn all the basics. So we probably should have phases of instructors, like maybe like, I don't know, let's say my belt levels beginner, white, yellow, green, blue, purple. So like maybe a blue belt could teach anything from like green and below. A purple belt could teach blue and below, and a brown belt could teach, purple and below, and then a black belt could teach everybody, right? Like that kind of thing. And that could be your standard of quality of levels of teachers, so that people know they're getting a phase 1 teacher or a phase 2 teacher, similar to like a doctor's assistant, or an assistant teacher in school, where they could run a class for the teacher and so on. What are
Yeah,
your
no,
thoughts on that?
I have no problem with that. Yeah, we do chevrons, and so like once you finish the white belt material as a storm team member, I know then you get a white chevron on your uniform, and now
Oh,
I
cool.
visually can see you can teach white belts, and now you're going to work. Now you're working on the yellow belt material, and then now you can teach the 2 levels of yellow belt once you get through and earn your yellow belt 1 and
That's
those type of
great.
things. Hmm.
Now, do you also have where those people could run a whole class? Like you have certain underbelts, like let's say the yellow with the 1 chevron. Can they run a beginner white belt class, the entire class, or they just
I
assist?
wouldn't. I wouldn't
Okay.
have them do that. And the only reason I say that is because that's your first impression of everyone. I want
Right.
either me or I want my head instructor to be running the white belts.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I will have them work with pods. So I might say, look, here these 3 are yours, or these 4 students are yours. I need you to work on, you're going to hold the pad and work on front kick with them, or you're going to hold the pad and work roundhouse kick with them, or you're going to
Right.
work on TriStar 4 number 1 with them, and that's what you're going to do. Like, so last night, part of the curriculum was belt tying, and I had what 3 storm team members with me, and I paired them up with each of them had 2 students that they were
Awesome.
working on, tying the belt. And then we spent, 3 to 4 minutes belt tying. And then my other white belts that have already been in it now for a month and a half, they already know how to tie their belts. So I paired them up with some of the other kids that are still having a little trouble.
I love that you're doing that, though. That's a big problem in my school. Like, and I told my instructor, the head instructor in my school, I said, we need to make sure these kids know how to tie their belts. And I said that they shouldn't be able to be promoted to their next belt until they could tie their own belt. I mean, young kids, 2 to 4 year olds, I get it, but I'm talking like anywhere from like 5-year-olds on up should basically learn how to tie their belts. It's almost like, we invented Velcro sneakers so that the kids don't have to learn how to tie their shoes. Like, let's literally take everything and make it easier so that you don't have to worry about it. Like, didn't they, and do they still have for sale in some of the supply companies that Velcro belt that it has a knot and the tie on the left side and the Velcro, and you just like go, and then the belt's tied, and then you take it off, you take it. It's like, to me, I think that we're trying to always simplify and make everything so much easier for people that they end up losing quality. It's almost like teaching them how to shop in a supermarket and then throwing them in the middle of the woods and say, go find your food. People are going to be looking for 7-Elevens, right?
Last night I had 2 white belts who, one girl knows how to tie her belt, the other one doesn't, but they both still have trouble with their left.
Right, left and right. I have that even with teenagers.
And I had them both put their hands out, like this, and I said, which one makes the L?
Right.
Not a backwards L, but which one makes the L?
Right.
And I'm amazed.
I am too, dude. I sometimes, like, it was funny. The other day, I think I mentioned this on one of the podcasts. Sometimes I do 2 of them a week so they blend in together. But I was like, I literally had a kid, like the parents are like, we don't want to commit for a year. We're not sure, we want to do month to month. I'm like, I'm sorry, we don't do that. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm thinking your kid was the kid who was just licking the floor. I'm not joking. He was literally licking the floor. So I'm like, if you want me to teach that kid, you better give me more of a commitment than just 1 month and me work my butt off. Yeah, like, I'm like, really, honestly. So I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I digressed a little, but back to instructor level. I think it's important too. I think a lot of times instructors, school owners, they go, hey, that guy is going to be a good instructor. That person will be a great instructor. And they handpick, or they only use, like I have a client that only uses brown belts and above in his leadership team. And I'm like, well, how many brown belts do you have? Maybe like 8. I go, so that's why you have a very small pool of people to choose from. Like, I start my leadership team with people from beginners, and beginners don't even have a white belt yet. And if they show interest in learning how to teach, and my leadership team does more like public speaking, goal setting, time management, time slicing, altruistic nature and service before self. So they're learning way more than just learning how to teach. But I'll put someone in from the early stages, and I'll start them as young as 7 or 8 years old in my leadership team. Because like you said before, I'm building bench strength. I want to know that if Johnny's sick and he usually takes the class, that I could always rely on the next person in line or 4 more, right? And so building bench strength is super important for your own sanity.
Yeah, most definitely. And I do it a little bit different. I mean, my storm team, or excuse me, my leadership doesn't happen until after you've been in the program for a year. So once you graduate from your beginner levels and you're going into the intermediate, then you have an opportunity to apply for leadership.
Awesome.
Storm team comes another 6 months after that, as long as you are in leadership. So
that's great.
It's just a little bit different. I used to do it where, before your first belt and definitely before your second belt, I was trying to upgrade people, into the leadership program way back, when they were hungry,
right.
and getting them to sign, a full year, or excuse me, a 4-year agreement and stuff like that.
Okay.
I've since I don't do that anymore. Now they're signing like a 2.5-year agreement, but they've already been in it for a year.
Right. Yeah. You see, I don't have any time. Like they would sign up in my school. The longest, other than black belts, is 1 year. So if they sign up and they upgrade into our leadership team, we just renew their agreement, and it's whatever their membership. If they're in the black belt club and leadership team, they pay for that program. And I've been recruiting more and more people into that. And here's why I brought that up before. Like, sometimes we're like, hey, that kid would be the best instructor ever. But that kid, I don't think so. Like my guy now, Ryan, that runs my dojo, I've said this before. I don't think that I would have, at the time when he was a teenager, I would have never really saw him as becoming the guy that he is now, helping me run the school, who's going to be the inheritor of my school. Right. Like, so like, I would never have thought that about him back in the day. He was quiet, kind of quirky, a little bit, a little bit odd at times with the way he, immature. But now he's amazing. And he's like been with me for 17 years. So I urge the listeners that if they're building their leadership teams and they want to try to find more bench strength, is like maybe have a criteria, a belt level and an age level, but then put it out there to everybody, because you never know who your next superstar is going to be. They might not be showing you it right now, but they might be the next virtuoso, best teacher ever, and so on. So I think that that's super important. So what do you do in your leadership teams, or like your instructor? Like I have my TLCD, team leadership, character development, and instructor training program together. So what do you do? Like, what are some of your lessons that you do to prepare instructors or assistants to become instructors?
Yeah. So my leadership, again, just leadership is different than STORM.
Okay.
So just to kind of clarify that, leadership is mainly, one is, of course, they get a different uniform. Second is they get to learn weapons, but then third is they learn leadership. They learn leadership qualities and skills, such as public speaking and time management, goal setting, those type of things.
Right.
Because every 3 months they have a little a workbook that they have to read that I've created, and then they have they have a form to fill out, from that workbook, and they have to turn it in.
Right.
And that's their leadership lesson for the 3 months. And so that's leadership. Moving on to STORM, what I've done with STORM is I've taken each belt level and I've chunked them all down to 2 months worth of information, teaching information, in order to learn how to teach that level, except for white belts. White belts has teaching a white belt or learning the white belt information to teach it is a 3-month process. And so the first, and by the way, there's a mental side and there's also a physical side to each month.
Okay.
So for instance, the physical side at white belt first month is obviously, how do you punch in, check in for your class? Where do you put your belongings? Where do you wait to enter into class? How do you enter into class? And then all the commands on bowing in and, just the beginning commands, the exiting commands, how you bow when you leave, how to teach them how to come to attention, and then their ready stance and their sparring stance. It's real basic, but I go through and I even say, there's 5 parts to a sparring stance, and here's what they are. And so that's the physical portion. And of course, the other moves are taught later. So, front kick and round kick, tristar form number 1. All those things are inside of different months, plus the self-defense and stuff like that. So I took the physical side, broke it down into 3 months of white belt. But then the mental side of teaching, one of them is they learn the 4 rules of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So explanation, demonstration. I can't think of them now. Repetition. What's the other one? Now I can't think of it. But anyways,
I think it's a C, right? CR, something.
Yes.
D-E-C-R.
Yeah, but I can't think of it right now. But anyways, they learn the 4 rules of teaching.
Correction.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then also we've got mental things that the white belts are learning. So they have to learn the 3 rules of concentration, the martial arts philosophy. So we teach them how to teach those things, but also make sure that they know how to introduce them and connect them in a real way. So meaning the 3 rules of concentration, they have hand movements, and I'm sure I got this from Tom Callis, but focus your eyes, focus your mind, and focus your body.
Yeah.
And the hand movements that go with it. But it's not just about teach this, right? It's, now teach them how to connect that to home, teach them how to connect that to school, teach them how to connect that inside the studio, so that it's a trifecta effect where, it's not just happening here at the karate school. And so that's the mental side of teaching my STORM team members how to teach. And then, by the way, not only do they, so all of those are inside of the app. Oh, I guess my phone is here. All of those are inside the app.
Yeah.
On our Spark app. So I have videos for every single one of those.
Right.
And then I created surveys inside there with questions based upon the videos that they watched. And then they have to get, 90% or higher on that test in order to then schedule
Right.
their physical test.
Mhm.
So all the physical moves that they learned how to teach, now they got to come in and they got to teach us as if we were a brand new white belt. How do you enter class? And they got to explain it. Where do you punch in? They got to explain it. Where do you put your belongings? They got to explain it. I mean, all of those things. And then they'll pass. So if they pass the written test and the physical test, then they pass month 1, then they move on to month 2.
I love it, man. That's a pretty extensive, teaching curriculum. I think that that's quite amazing. So like, even if I was a parent and I was going to enroll my child in your curriculum, I'd be like, wow, that's a whole nother level of education other than what they initially joined for, the kicking and the punching aspect of it, right? Like, so it's almost like you and I have both done, like probably tens and tens of thousands of dollars on self-improvement in our lives, whether it be seminars or books or, courses or Tony Robbins and spent thousands and thousands of dollars. And now we're sharing all these years of experience with our leadership team, our Storm team, my TLCD, Team Leadership Character Development Program, and so on. So it's quite amazing. So do you charge for this program?
I do. So, and you're going to slap me for it, but it's only $10 more per month.
Okay. So it's $120 a year.
Yeah. Yeah. So now,
so let me, ready? You have to react. Ready? And
did I go the right way? Maybe I should have went this way. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that was actually the way I did it on the screen. So that went down. Okay. So I did it. And for people who are just listening on the podcast, I did a video smack and Dwayne turned his head. So that's what happened there.
Yeah. So it's very, very inexpensive. I don't want the money to necessarily be a deterrent. What I want is I want to create really, really good instructors that I can hire.
Right. However, here's the cool thing. And by the way, I have another client that he has a leadership team and I'm trying to get him to charge and he refuses to do so because he doesn't believe that he should charge them to teach them how to teach. And I try to use the analogy, and for the school owners that are listening. So you go to school to be a nurse and then you have to do a residency, or you go to school to be a school teacher and then you have to teach and do student teaching. A lot of the times that's free. You go and you dedicate time to learn how to teach in the environment of teaching. So I've always thought that, free stuff or cheap stuff doesn't really give value to what it is. We know that to be true, but it's important to charge, even if you're charging $10. But, I'll give you an example. My leadership team, I have it on audio download. Like people could actually buy my whole entire leadership team with a whole year of lessons, student lessons with each breakdown on goal setting and time management. Then it has the instructor portion. I'm not saying this to sell it, although it's available on my website, but I had one of my clients buy it, right? And it cost like $200, $199 to get the whole year's worth of lessons. So when he was starting his leadership team, and I charge $50 a month extra for my leadership team, $600 a year. So he called me, he says, my leadership team starts tonight. I said, oh, how you doing? He goes, oh, it's a little slow. I only got 10 people to sign up. I said, well, hey, listen, that's another $500 a month. He's like, no, I charge $500 a month per student for their tuition. And it's like $350 to be in my leadership team. And I was like, what? And I'm charging $50. He's charging $300 more than I am to do his leadership team with the lessons that I've developed that I give to my students for $50. So it's very valuable. I just want to make sure people understand. And that mindset of, hey, I'm teaching them how to be able to work for me. That's what any college does. That's what any internship program does. My daughter did a lot of freebies over the last year of her college working as an intern for nothing. I mean, they were working her to death. She was doing 50 hours a week. So it's important to understand that you should charge for it, at least charge for it, not give it away for free. So I have another question for you. So what do you think would be like, we could have a person who's an assistant. They don't have to be the most dynamic. We know that we speak to a lot of instructors. They're not the most dynamic, but I just had a friend he's buying a school, and he said, he said to me, he goes, "You're a very dynamic teacher." He goes, "But I'm not like that. How do I learn how to be charismatic or dynamic?" And what are your thoughts on that? Do you have to be?
No.
If you're not, can you learn? Like, what do you think?
No, I don't think you have to be. Can you learn how to be? Yes, I think to a certain degree. But see, Mr. Bean isn't like me at all.
Right.
He's very, very even keel the whole time. Although I'll hear him say some jokes that I do
Right.
every now and then. And it's funny because I hear myself and him all the time.
Yeah.
But he doesn't present it the same way.
Right. Right.
I mean, he's not Ferris Bueller monotone,
Right.
like you're going to fall asleep. But he's just
Right.
a very serious guy. So the quick answer, no, you don't have to be charismatic like you or necessarily like me. You have to. Charisma is not the key. Connection is the key.
Okay. That's
And
a
so
good line.
Yeah. So if you're able to make the connection with the student and they know that you care about them genuinely and that, you have their best interest in mind, you don't have to be the person that's, Tony Robbins jumping off the wall. Not that Tony Robbins jumps off the wall, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to be that energetic.
Right. I just wrote, Dwayne said, charisma is not the key, connection's the key. And that's pretty prophetic. That's a nice, a saying, because, and by the way, I think though, it really all depends. We think sometimes charisma is like, an actor animated, high, and you can have charisma where you could speak softly and still draw people in. You can be dynamic and not be, a showman, so to speak. Like Mr. Bean would probably he probably has a massive amount of charisma and dynamics, but he's more even keel or more serious. And I'm that way too. I like to joke, I like to have fun, but I'm serious. My other guy, sometimes the kids, the guy who runs the dojo with me, Ryan, sometimes the kids don't know which Ryan they're going to get. This day he's energized, that day he's funny, this day he's serious. So sometimes it's confusing to the kids. Like, I'm one way and one way only, and that's who I am.
I would say another key would be voice inflection, understanding and knowing how and when to use good voice inflection.
Right.
Would be vital. And
right.
Then also, this was amazing when I heard this, but one of the biggest things when you're, doing a speech or when you're talking to somebody, you need the buy-in, need to make sure they're paying attention. One of the biggest things that you can do is use the pause.
Right. The pregnant pause, I call it.
Yes. And I think that's very dramatic. And I've done, talks about that with our storm team, because we talk about voice inflection. And I said, listen, just picture imagine your favorite song. And if the beats all ran into one another and there was never any time in between the beats where there wasn't any music or there wasn't a break, or if it just kept going and going and going and going and going and going, and there's that song would be annoying.
Yeah.
The pauses in music are just as important as the music. Right.
Yeah, like, being a guitar player, even knowing I'm taking lessons, like doing the same drill over and over and over again gets even if it's incredible, after a few times it gets incredibly boring, right? So that's interesting. And I think that, for example, I just talked to a friend of mine who does public speaking, and he did something, and I was listening to him, and within a 2-minute time frame, he said, and cool, like 40 times within 2 minutes. He doesn't even realize it, because when we're looking for words to say, instead of what I just did, I paused a bit. I would fill that with something because we think that the brain needs to have sound in order for it to make impact, right? So I would say, and the other day I went, cool, listen, and like all of a sudden that becomes jumbled and it doesn't make any sense and it sounds like you don't know how to speak in public. So we have to always, even yourself and myself, I have to constantly remind myself, stop saying or or like, those things, and take that pregnant pause. So you think public speaking is a big part of being a dynamic or charismatic or a engaging teacher?
I would say, yeah, engaging and connecting teacher, public speaking is very important. And public speaking, again, doesn't have to be you don't have to necessarily be a dynamic public speaker. So you don't have to be Zig Ziglar. You don't have to be Tony
Right.
Robbins.
Right.
Because I'll tell you, Dan Kennedy is a really good public speaker, but he is totally different than Zig Ziglar.
Right.
Dan Kennedy is not, and I did the L. He's not as charismatic,
Right.
As Zig Ziglar is. I would say Dan Kennedy is just straight to the point. He's going to give you the meat and potatoes, no other fillers. There are some jokes that he'll throw in, but he's just a different speaker. But he's able to communicate what he's trying to get across to you. So yes, public speaking, hands down, is one of the best things that you can do as a martial arts instructor.
Yeah, there's another thing that I think is very overlooked in teaching, and I love this movie. It was with Brendan Fraser. It was called Inkheart. Inkheart was a movie about him being this guy called the wordsmith, and any of the stories that he told would come to life. And they didn't have books; they would only be passed down from storyteller to storyteller, and the books or the stories would come to life. And I thought it was pretty cool because it made me think a lot of what we do in class. Like when we're teaching martial arts, we should have a way to explain it and show relevance. For example, when I do this move, it works really great. And when I was younger, I got into a real fight and the person did this and this, and I used this move. Or when I was a bouncer or a security guard or, a bounty hunter, whatever your life is like, this is how I used. And the wordsmithing is a great way for you to get your point across as well and develop a charismatic type of, when you draw people in to your lesson, make it so something that they could remember via a story. I think that's something that's overlooked in this day and age.
Yeah. So building that bench strength is going to be highly important for your sanity, but also just the longevity of your student. The longer they're with you, the more impact you can make on them. And I don't just necessarily mean like for yourself where you monetarily are going to make more money because they're with you longer, although that's true. Just the depth of your relationship, because you know as well as I do, the longer that you are with someone, the deeper the relationship in most cases becomes.
Yeah. And by the way, too, that see, you and I are both super conscious of the ums and the uhs, right? Or like I just said, I think that when a person travels along the journey of the martial arts, it starts off as just purely physical learning martial arts. Then in order, I've always said I became a great teacher by teaching, but also by, but not just training. Like when I started to teach, I really solidified my martial art technique. And then when I traveled around the world teaching different languages and different places, I was able to become an even better teacher because I had to now capture a group's attention that I've never met before. I'd have people trying me out and testing me out to see if the moves work. So I had to know that they worked. But it was so important for me, especially to teach. And I think that that's what makes martial artists better. So there are different levels in which a student's journey continues. And part of that should be assisting in teaching and eventually mentoring and being a role model to others. And then eventually, hopefully, maybe doing it part-time or full-time, or just because you love it, sharing the art with others because you have a passion for it. and then giving back to your instructor. Nowadays, people are very much one-sided. I'm paying you tuition, I get my lessons. That's it. Years ago, I still would do anything for my teachers. Like I would buy them. My teacher would call me up, hey, I really like that sword you used in that video. I'd like one, and I'd package one up and ship it to them. You know what I mean? And that's just because of my dedication, my reverence, and my loyalty to my instructor. So that layer upon layer that you're giving them as they become instructors and assistants and SWAT team members gives them a deeper appreciation for the art, and it gives them a much more fulfilling experience.
Yep, I agree. Yeah. So
Rick Kellerman, Seafood Kellerman, who we just had breakfast this morning, he said making the story example relevant to all different types of students is the key. Yeah, isn't that true? And by the way, you could change and alter the story. Sometimes I'm like, hey, you ever hear the story of the scorpion and the frog? And all the kids are like, yes. And I'm like, okay, I told it already. I get it. Let me give you another story. And sometimes I'll make stories up or whatever it is. But you want to tie in that lesson and get that attention span. I think that's important. So what would you think? We only have like 12 minutes left. What do you think a school owner should start doing? Maybe like a few things to start to build their bench strength, build their assistant instructors, and some action steps they could take.
Well, look, I would say always maybe, especially if you're a one-person show, have the belt above help you with the belt below.
Okay.
Whether it's learning the new, or reinforcing the new kick or the new punch or the new form or the new self-defense move, just having them work with them for 30 seconds or 3 minutes or not necessarily teaching the whole thing,
right?
But just working with them in that. I think that's the easiest level to start off with. And the two things that happen is, one, you get to be freed up so that you can move around and make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to know. But then secondarily to that is the individuals that's helping, they get a kick out of that. Like,
right.
They are extremely proud that you ask them to assist you. And then lastly, there is a third benefit. The student that is getting helped, there's two parts to this. The student that's getting help sometimes might pick up the information better from another student.
Yeah.
And second to that, go, wow, I can't wait until I get to do this with someone else.
Yeah, you know what? And what you said was super important, because sometimes coming from us, the hierarchy or the head instructor, it's intimidating, but going like, hey, go learn that from your buddy who's a white belt, that you've been training with. And then they feel less uncomfortable. And I think that's very important that you just said that. So I think a portion of the instructor training program or whatever leadership program that you have, you should have your assistants helping in the classroom that they're in. And by the way, that's why in my school, if you're in our TLCD program, they wear blue gis. Now, not all of them want to wear, because we wear black in general, but they wear a blue quilted judo gi when they're doing leadership teams. Some of them wear it only to the leadership team classes, which I think is silly. Ultimately, my goal was to have everyone who's in leadership team wear the blue gis for two reasons. One, when a parent's watching on the monitors or seeing the class, they're going, hey, Shianali's all by himself. Now they see 4 or 5 blue gis and they go, what are those blue gis? Oh, those are all assistants. And by the way, even if they're just there to do their class, if I need them at any given moment, I'd look around the room and pick a blue gi, a leadership team member. And then also they'll say, why do they have blue gis? Another way you sell the program. I'm going, no, they're in our leadership team. You want to hear about it? Yeah, I'd love to hear. So there's a few layers of why I wear a different color uniform, and they have a beautiful patch, and it makes them proud. Like, we wear blue gis, black top, but I give the student the whole gi, the blue gi top and pants, even though they don't wear the pants. The other day, my guy was first time wearing his uniform, came with his blue gi and his blue pants, the only blue. And I'm like, what are you, in the blue man group? Like that kind of thing. And everyone was busting his chops. I'm like, why are you wearing a blue? And it was funny, but he was so excited to be in his uniform. And that's important as well. So that's really good. So, okay. So what are a few others? Any other ones?
What's the question?
We were talking about I don't know, actually. No, we were talking about making sure that we, some of the things that the characteristics, I think, or the benefits of it. I lost track of it too. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't remember what the original question was, but
yeah, we can't
rewind it.
Yeah, exactly. So let's finish up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I do think that, and I hope the listeners already have some sort of, program or programs that help to cultivate this
Right.
opportunity
Right.
for their school, but also for the student. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, yes, you as a studio owner, you get a benefit of having a bench strength, but what it actually does for the student, I think, is even more important. And like I remember one storm team meeting that I had where I asked one of the storm team members, and I think she was like 12 or 13 years of age,
Hmm.
one of my second degree black belts. So she had been with me for 6 years or a little bit more. And I said, what's one thing that that you've learned by being a student here or being on the storm team? And this was kind of funny. She said, well, I know how to handle jerks because
Oh
you've been
yeah.
a jerk to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I go, what? And she goes, well, I go, can you, like, I've been a jerk to you? And she said, well, because you've been tough on me and, you'd yell at me and, put me in different scenarios and stuff. I now know how to handle when people do that to me.
Right.
And I go, okay, all right.
I-
Like,
I'll I'll take that, I guess. Like I didn't know that was being a jerk, but I guess I'll take that, right?
yeah. And I think at her level, with regards to her age and her communication ability, that was a compliment. And I did ask. I said, so is this a good thing or a bad thing? She says, oh, no, it's a good thing. I said, okay,
Oh,
then
okay.
that's
All right, good.
that's
That's
perfectly fine.
important. Yeah.
But the reason I bring that up is because I think sometimes, just like we should with all of our students, we a good presentation includes somebody that's going to tell you what they're going to tell you, then they tell you, and then they tell you what they told you.
Right.
But I think a good follow up to that is there needs to be a reminder of what you've learned as well up until this point.
Right. Right.
I think that also helps to cultivate some depth within your ranks.
Hmm.
A lot of times we even do this too, where we take for granted the information that we've learned or the individuals that we've learned them from, or the people that have helped us along the way. So to take time to reflect and look at that and show respect for that or reverence for that, I think is important. So I think that's another thing that needs to be instilled into your program, whether
Yeah.
it's your program in total or whether it's your program just in the leadership or the storm or whatever you want to call it. I
Yes.
think that that's vitally important to do some reflection, inside of maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, whatever it is. But and I think the smart thing to do would be to strategically put that into your programs so that you're just getting that buy-in over and over and over again.
Yeah, I agree. I have two thoughts. One is also too like I just had a call to God meeting with one of my black belt young kids who's an assistant who's actually on payroll, and he was being disrespectful, talking when he shouldn't have. He's kind of feeling his oats, like and I'd say something, and rather than him saying yes sir, he'd say oh yeah because like always had something back to say, and then we wear tabby shoes with the split toe on our feet. I'm like, why don't you have your tabbies on? He goes, I don't feel like in front of the whole class. I don't feel like wearing them. Like, so I'm like, you in my office right now. And I like reamed him out. I said, listen, if this happens again, you're done. You're not teaching. You're off of payroll. You're not assisting. You're out of helping. And all you do is come to your classes and that's it. And if you don't like that, you could also quit and go somewhere else. And I thought maybe like, cause I was hard on him. He's 14, but he's a big boy. He's been with me since he's 3 or 4. And I thought I was going to lose him, but he ended up coming in the last 2 days with a new and improved attitude. So you have to always hold people to a higher standard that are in your leadership team because we want them to be the rock stars of our school. We want everyone to go, hey, I want my son to act like senpai so-and-so or that leadership team or that SWAT team member. Not only is that good for their kids, but it's also good to promote our program because look at the difference with the way people act when they're in that program, right? Makes sense?
Right. Yep. Totally makes sense. Yeah. And I think for me, having Mr. Bean in charge is golden because
right.
he is a rule follower more than me.
Yeah. That's
And
good.
he has those high standards and he expects, he inspects what he expects,
Yeah.
but he also sets the expectations ahead of time as well. So I love it.
Yeah, and by the way, isn't that and I don't want to get into the world today, but isn't that what's wrong with the world today, where we're allowing people to rob up to $800 worth of merchandise? We're allowing kids. I saw a video on TikTok or YouTube where these kids are on motocross bicycles, BMX bikes, riding through a supermarket and kicking women, children, as they were riding wheelies on go cams through the supermarket, and no one's stopping them. Like, back in the day, that would have been a sidekick into the counter and a beaten behind the supermarket by the local guy, like you'd see in a mafia movie where I forget what movie that is, where they come in to start a fight, these bikers, and then he asks them nicely to leave, and then they don't leave, and then he finally walks over and locks the door, and he says, "Now you can't leave," and the bikers say, "Oh yeah," and they laugh. And then all the mafia guys come out and beat the crap out of everybody. Like, there's always got to be some, repercussions for your actions. And I think as a standard, the Bronx Tale, who wrote that? I think it was Rick or somebody wrote it. But anyway, I think that's Phil is one of my students from back in the 90s. And so it's super important for us to hold that standard in our school. And holding the leadership team and the senseis to a super high standard only makes them better. And I think that that's important. We forget to do that, and we're afraid to at times. Well, we can't be. We're running the last line of defense to keep these people out of getting in trouble and being troublemakers. So that's the place where that should happen.
Well, and I think we should be known for tough love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the military is even getting soft. Like, you don't want to run and you can't run. They're like, okay, then you could quit. Like, it used to be, if you didn't listen in the military, you took your toothbrush and you scrubbed toilets and then ran 15 miles with a backpack filled with bricks in it. Now they're contacting the military attorney and they're getting yelled at for treating people harshly. I mean, it's crazy that this is the fiercest group in the world to defend our country, and we're raising them as if they were like, powder puffs. I mean, it's crazy what goes on. But anyway, so I think this is a great call. I hope that the people listening got something out of it, because for me, you have to have a bench. You have to have a bench strength of instructors to help you, because I would never be able to do what I do unless I did have that.
Yep, agreed.
Oh, Sensei Toby just hopped in and he said, "Hey guys, $2.99. Yes, this is our 200th. By the way, I'm glad you brought that up, Sensei. Next week, we're going to do our 300th episode, and I want to give out 10 of my books for free to the first 10 listeners that are on there, and I'll pay for everything, my book, my shipping, everything to you guys. So I just want to give that out as a little, a gift to everyone for being on our 300th podcast. Can you imagine? We've been doing 300 of these, Dwayne.
Yeah, well, I can imagine it. I was here for all of them, wasn't I?
I know. Yeah, I know. But it seems like it hasn't been going on that long. But how many? It's probably like 4 years, right?
4 or 5. I mean, we didn't hit every single week, but yeah.
Right. But I enjoy being with you, Dwayne, every week. It makes my day and makes my week better. So thanks for being you, and I appreciate it. So yeah, let's keep it going. And next week we'll give out that giveaway.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks a lot, sir. I just want to remind everybody to go to schoolownertalk.com. There is a plethora of information that's on there with regards to the past podcasts. And so now you have 299 podcasts to go listen to, unless you're listening to this one right now, and then you have 298 to catch up.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and
Allie.
you could also look it up based on topic. So if you want to find out about retention, you just plug it in, right? And it'll pop it up.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right, very cool. Thanks, Dwayne.
Episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk Podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out EliteInsights.com for all your website needs. LeadHunterMedia.com, your online digital marketer and content provider. Academy Kings BJJ Growth Consulting and Management at GrowMyAcademy.com. SparkMembership.com, the best darn software for school owner manager on the planet. GetKarateStudents.com, a martial arts growth consulting company for all your school systems. We will see you next time.